Welcome to AltoVita's series on trends and topics shaping global mobility. My name is Carolina. I'm the co-founder of AltoVita, and today I'll be speaking to Vladimir Vrzhovski, who is supporting organizations in scaling their talent mobility policies. He's with Mercer, and he's based out of UAE. Today's session will be evolving around the topic of temporary housing and duty of care. This session will be particularly interesting and exciting for property management companies and service department operators around the world who want to play an integral part in the corporate housing sector. Well, thank you so much, Vladimir, for being with us today. So would you be able to give us a little bit of an introduction about your journey and your current role?
All right, thank you, Karina, for inviting me. So I have been actually in the mobility space for almost 10 years now. I started from working with DSPs, then I have joined global relocation management companies, and then I actually went on the other side into the global mobility consulting space with Mercer. So currently I'm actually based in the Middle East. I'm based in Dubai, and I'm actually heading Mercer's mobility practice for the Middle East and African markets. So I'm actually covering these two regions, and I'm primarily working with companies which are based in the region, and helping them actually shape their policies, help them understand how to deploy talent, and help them really put a bit more structure around their programs to be able to actually scale it.
Great. So because you're the mastermind behind the talent mobility programs, can you tell us a bit more about what does duty of care means and what does it mean for the corporate traveler?
Yeah, I think that duty of care overall has been a very strong, has been an important or integral part of HR since the beginning of the concept of HR. And lately has been evolving more and more, and then technically that has been cascaded down to global mobility. So as a duty of care, we see it more on a corporate level. However, it's been cascaded down across different HR functions, and part of that is actually global mobility. So in a nutshell, really what it means is just taking care of your employees when they're deployed in various types of assignments overseas, especially in the global mobility context. And that in particular would mean that companies do really have to take care of their employees, regardless of where in the office or they're actually on an assignment. And they ensure that they have the right policies and practices in place to actually align the duty of care practices of the overall company with the global mobility.
So does it mean safety, security, and perhaps well-being as well during the moves?
I think that from a conceptual perspective, safety and security always came first. After that, it kind of like evolved more into health. And with COVID, I think that we got an extra emphasis on well-being as well. So it's a bit more holistic package these days. Traditionally, it started with safety, security, looking at evacuation measures, looking at providers that can evacuate assignees during terrorist attacks or during tsunami or during any kind of emergencies. And after that, that slowly has started evolving into providing better healthcare benefits, providing more well-being or mindfulness programs these days, and also that being started cascading it down to the vendors as well, then starting technically to look into how vendors are looking after their assignees overall, and what are the measurements that they implement to ensure this duty of care.
Why do you think that we're seeing such an increasing human-centric approach to duty of care?
Yeah, I think that there is a bit of a conflict here between providing more flexibility to the assignees and at the same time ensuring that we have the right duty of care. Traditional mobility is evolving into a space where we want to actually provide more flexibility to assignees, flexibility of choice, flexibility of deciding what's best for them while they're actually gone on assignment. And at the same time, we need to ensure that all of these programs are being compliant. And that technically does create certain, I would say, complexities for mobility managers and for relocation management companies at the same time, understanding how they're able to really merge this, do-it-yourself kind of concept of mobility with still ensuring that there is enough duty of care or at least, I would say the minimum duty of care that needs to be provided from a corporate perspective.
Great. Well, thank you so much for this. It is definitely a trend that we're seeing as well with AltoVita, particularly when we are providing different in-destination services and services which are evolving around the well-being. Well, I wanted to ask, what does duty of care really mean for corporate housing providers?
Right. Well, I'll tell you maybe what it means to me, maybe as a corporate business traveler, and then how do I see that being translated across different kind of vendors. If we look at corporate travel in general, there is a lot of flexibility around do it yourself. Right? You book your own flights, you book your own hotels, you book your own accommodation. However, the problem is compliance after that. Different companies take compliance in a different way, right? A lot of the companies traditionally are going to be very strict around compliance, and this is why we don't really see a lot of flexibility, especially around the travel. I personally, I'm a heavy traveler in my region, at least pre-COVID, right? I used to travel at least once a week for a couple of days to visit my clients around the region. So I used to book a lot of flights, stay in a lot of hotels or corporate accommodation, and then ensuring that all those providers, from my travel agent to which hotel where I'm staying, do I have the right health insurance? Do I have the right risk insurance in place? My company has ensured that I have international SOS app on my phone in case something happens, I can get evacuated immediately. And all they had to make sure that I received the right risk assessments of the city that I'm traveling 24 hours prior travel or any kind of timely update. All this actually falls under the duty of care concept. And that then actually has helped me perform my job better, right? So I don't really need to care about my safety security, and I can actually focus on the task that I'm doing. In the corporate travel world, or let's say that, looking at your side of the business of what AltoVita is in, I think that that would apply pretty much in the same kind of way. And I think there has been a lot of attempts, and a lot of companies are still doing it very successfully. I would have to say that they have a very stringent measures of these are our providers. This is how we're going to use our providers, and this is who our assignees can stay with, and this is where they're not allowed to stay with. So there is already, I think, a sort of a threshold that needs to be fulfilled when it comes to corporate housing providers. Now, during COVID, that has actually kind of like it raised the bar significantly. From a concept of social distancing, how employees check in, how do you inform maybe the corporate travel manager that employee has checked in, all the way to is their Wi-Fi good enough in their apartment in case they get quarantined to be able to work from that apartment. How are they able to get groceries delivered? Is there elevator in the building? There's so many different points that are equally important, or if not even more important these days, to ensure that duty of care for corporate housing as well.
Yeah, from our perspective is definitely that. And on the top, I would as well mention for our property managers that it's important to really consider Hotellike services. So that would be, for example, 24/7 support line, emergency line in case something happens. It would be a professional incident management, as well as weekly cleaning if requested by the client. These are all really important parts of the duty of care.
Yeah, having a look at throughout my career, I have actually stayed at different kind of accommodations, and I've from personal experience, it was always the experience is very important for and especially enhanced, and you kind of like build to become a provider of preference or a provider of choice based on the feedback that you receive. So as property managers, even when we go on Airbnb, right, we always look at the type of amenities that are there, and then we choose. Maybe the first option is looking at the type of amenities that or the type of services that the apartment provides, and then actually you look at the feedback after that, right? But these kind of like go hand in hand. So quality does go hand in hand with safety, security, which is going to be a number one priority for duty of care, and then ensuring that safety and security as well. It's not just saying, well, you know what, we can help you. You know, if there is crime happening in the building, we'll be able to report it. But actually, how do property managers take a proactive approach towards ensuring safety and security? And after that, we're looking at the health and the well-being of the employees as well, or their technically their tenants. And then what are the other measures that they will be able to implement to actually ensure that there's this holistic approach towards duty of care is actually implemented in the accommodation.
Do you think that the duty of care concept evolved with the current global pandemic?
It evolved, and probably it will continue evolving at the same time. And I think, again, the two key forces is the pandemic and the demand for flexibility. If we take these two options, I think traditionally travel managers would have said, you're booked in this accommodation, you're going to stay there for the next X amount of days until your assignment is done, or until the purpose for your trip is over, and then you're back. But now more and more employees are actually requesting to be able to choose that apartment, to choose where they want to be, right? People don't want to be located next to the office anymore, right? They want to maybe be located in a different part of the city that can be more of an exploratory visit at the same time. So different factors that impact that duty of care from a flexibility perspective. And then there's the pandemic, right? So the pandemic puts an extra care or an extra emphasis on this concept as well. Not just looking at apartments where you have an outbreak or high density areas, for example, which are more susceptible to the COVID, let's say, all the way to are employees going to be reliant on public transport? How difficult is actually or how expensive it is to get a taxi and get to where they actually need to be? And all these factors which can mitigate the risk of them getting sick. Let's assume that the corporate travel business is not going to come back at the same level as it was before during the pandemic. However, post-pandemic, we do see that the moment that the travel industry, the corporate travel industry bounces back, there's still going to be the need of how services are provided is going to be changed significantly, but also what do assignees choose and where they want to stay is going to actually change significantly as well in terms of area, location, safety, security, health, and additional different factors from an amenity perspective of the apartments as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really, you've mentioned several points that we are absolutely seeing in terms of the corporate demand that we are receiving. So first you mentioned amenities. So just an interesting observation. We've definitely recording a demand for Netflix-equipped apartments, as well as, of course, very stringent rules when it comes to disinfections, but as well various amenities, such as, for example, virtual guides about the cities. So where's the closest hospital, where's the closest pharmacy, which should be as well something that property managers should always provide to the guests to help them get around the city.
Yeah, I think that is a sort of a shared responsibility between the corporate, the relocation management company, the DSP, maybe the service providers, and the hosts, if we call them, right? We call them hosts. Mm-hmm. So I think that hosts are supposed to drive that experience as well, to become a host of preference in a way, especially if now again they can get rated and they can get chosen by the next and the next and the next assignee, and that word of mouth is always there. I stayed in this great apartment, recommend to their colleagues that they want to stay again, and that's that flexibility. Then the corporate needs to say, yes, we had a great experience with this host, we'd like to actually use them again. And then it's the responsibility of the relocation management company and the value chain of providers to ensure that hosts continue providing services at the right level. So I think there is no really a top-down decision. The duty of care drivers, I think, are set at a corporate level. We'd say these are our minimum standards that they need to be fulfilled. However, the innovation and the quality is driven by the host. They drive the innovation on how often they can clean the apartment. They drive the innovation of are they going to provide Netflix, or are they going to provide three more on-demand kind of services as well, right? Are they going to provide just the basic Wi-Fi connection? They're going to provide an enhanced Wi-Fi connection. Is it secure? Is it not secure? Right? So is there VPN in the apartment? So there's so many different points, which I understand they come at cost. However, in the current environment, I think that costs is something that probably is going to get a bit more acceptable from a perspective of, if I need to pay just some percentage extra, but I'm going to get all these extras, why would I not do it? I mean, still we have, from a hotel perspective, we have the 5-star, the 5-star, 4-star, 3-star hotel, and all of them has their own target audience, let's say. So I think that from an apartment perspective, especially apartments which are, their target group is actually corporate travelers, not the typical tourist Airbnbers, etc. I think that they actually need to be aiming for the 4-star, 5-star hotel service, because again, duty of care and quality are going to be playing a more crucial role than price itself.
You've mentioned cost efficiencies, which are not going to be probably the priority at this stage, because the objective is going to be to ensure speedy and responsible travel recovery. What we've been seeing is that there's been an increased demand in, we call it seamless experience. So basically, when a client books an apartment with AltoVita, they can as well seamlessly, via technology that we provide, book an airport transportation, as well as fridge refill, potentially as well get a fitness class secured, all our verified vendors. So we definitely saw an increased demand for these services, which again goes hand in hand with the seamlessness and safety of the whole travel journey.
Yeah, and I think that one of the key points is going to be language dependencies. If we just look at across different markets, and if we just say that English would be probably language of choice for most of the corporate travelers, how do you actually bridge the barriers of language dependencies, not just across European market but anywhere else, right? And being able to provide us a good service with the right support, having no language dependencies, being able the host to be able actually to speak multiple languages. And be able to actually service these corporate travelers. I think that the demand. I think that from what a host would provide, it's not going to be heavily. I think I don't think it's going to really create extra work for them, because typically business travelers would, if there is something that is in need, they tend to actually talk upwards, right? They would talk to their providers, they'll talk to their corporate, they'll talk to the RMC. They're not going to actually try to reach out to the host. However, if the host is able really to respond and provides that insurance that I'm able to actually come in and respond very quickly, as simple as fix the sink, right? The fix the sink problem has been there for ages. You reach out to your corporate travel manager, that goes back to there, that goes in a different time zone, that the request get generated. By the time the sink is fixed, you actually left the apartment, right? So I think that these are the small stuff that there needs to be certain kind of guidelines of me as a host. I'm able to support you in these matters. However, probably if you need something a bit more complex, you need to go back in the value chain or the supply chain and understand from where you can get that help. However, the fix the sink situation is a typical one where actually tenants can actually go straight to the landlord and get a speedy service. And then if that comes at an extra cost, then of course, then the landlord needs to actually communicate that back to the supply chain to understand how they can rectify it. However, there should be a clear distinction of the type of service that can be provided from both sides, and the assignee should know in which direction they should go for which kind of issues.
Absolutely. I would just add that here in this case, property managers absolutely need to have a plan ahead in case there is an incident, they need to manage it swiftly, because it's slightly a different situation when you're living in an apartment for 30 days and the washer is not working. Then it really is a big issue. You don't even have the time to concentrate on these small, problems, because you're there on an assignment. You need to focus on your job. Yeah,
exactly.
And Vladimir, if you take the top-down approach, because you've been advising the companies on temporary housing providers, for example, what would be the criteria that you would advise them to use in order to make the selection and do an onboarding process, for example?
Mm-hmm. I think that what we try to do is match corporate travel, business travel with global mobility as close as possible. From a policy perspective, what we see is that travel, arranging flights, understanding what kind of airfare employees get, etc. We try to synchronize that as close as possible with corporate travel, so we don't really create two distinct kind of approaches. Especially that from an assignment perspective, yes, sometimes you consider an assignment whatever is over three months. However, more often these days, the global mobility teams and functions start looking after business travelers as well. Business travelers very often falls between the cracks from an ownership perspective. Is it HR? Is it home? Is it host HR? Is it global mobility? Is it tax provider that is supposed to be taking care of it? However, we do see a shift in ownership, and we see that global mobility is trying to actually take an ownership of that process as well. And hence, we see that synchronizing, and I think that corporate travel policies have been very well established for ages now. However, often they are not really reinvented or reimagined very often because of the stringency, and I guess because of how difficult it is really to change a policy at a scale. So what we see is that global mobility is going to bring on the table to the corporate travel that potential approach towards flexibility. And then corporate travel is going to drive the decisions on type of providers used, minimum requirements. There is a lot around cash, expenses, payments, automation that is being dictated there, and then that takes us into a direction of whoever can provide a best service from, I would say, from a provider, not from a host, but rather from a provider perspective, who is able actually to provide scale, speed, innovation, and efficiencies to companies that will be able to and cater to their needs. Ultimately, would be able actually to evolve as key providers in that space, which is business travel and mobility as well.
Right, thank you. And my last question would be, because you've mentioned SOS International app, which helps mobility tracking. So how do you see new technology and innovation enhancing duty of care?
That's a very good question. I think that there's going to be a lot of speculation around how the next normal would look like for corporate travelers, and what would they need. I think that the needs will change, the demand will change as well. Traditionally, there has been a lot of providers which are operating that space, and do a very good job. They come at a certain cost. However, corporates, when it comes to duty of care, are sort of willing to ensure that there is that duty of care met every single time someone travels. So international SOAs, I think there were companies like GeoShield, Travel Q, etc., which are providing similar services from an app perspective. I think that the innovation is going to come within the do-it-yourself kind of travel. So it's not on assignment or post assignment type of services, but pre-assignment type of services. And here is where we see the rise of mobility platforms which provide that sort of I would say do-it-yourself mobility type of experience, relocation experience, if you want to call it, which are going to start to emerge even more. based on how the typical demographics of assignees has changed, right? So the assignees are getting younger and younger. I think that the majority of the assignees these days for corporates are millennials. Millennials have actually different kind of needs. The demand for flexibility is there, so actually the need for do-it-yourself mobility is going to be there. And then we want to, and then corporates would like to actually put only a framework around that and ensure that there is a right framework where that freedom is going to be provided. And I think more and more the drivers are going to be at probably pre-assignment, and then maybe at assignment sort of high-level support. Maybe chatbots, maybe, I don't need to call anyone, but I can WhatsApp you or send a Facebook message. I can demand a service. I can probably pay through an app. I don't need to really go in and pick up the keys, but I expect the apartment is going to be ready. So there are going to be multiple ways that technology is going to drive this. But from an experiential perspective, I think the experience is going to actually play the key role going forward here.
Thank you so much. Well, that sounds like a possible way to really combine duty of care and then self-service type of bookings and mobility experiences.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vladimir. And have a good day.
Yeah, thank you, Carolina. Thank you for inviting me, and have a good day as well. Thanks. Bye.